Maria Horn for State Representative of the 64th District. I'm going to put that to a vote now. I've heard many seconds. So, up for election by those who, excuse me, this is my first time doing this, so I apologize, Maria. But I'm flattered to be here.
Just make a motion that...
I make a motion?
That the secretary cast one ballot for Maria Horn. And then
we can do that.
Yes.
Of course, who knows that better than you, Roberta? Then I will ask, and please capture this, Shelley, that I will ask you to cast one ballot for Maria Horn for the nomination of 64th District Representative.
We need a second?
Well, you can have a second.
Can we have a second? Thank you, Marlene.
Yeah, all those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Delegates and friends, I accept the nomination to be the nominee for the 64th Assembly seat. I am, last time I was at an occasion like this with so many flags was my swearing in as a United States Attorney, which Tom remembers in particular because after the swearing in, which is quite a solemn occasion, the U.S. Attorney walked up to him and said, "Now say goodbye to her, because you won't be seeing her for a while."
It's the same thing here.
Yeah, we laughed about that.
I'm
So
ready.
the resonance is kicking in. And I thank you all so much for the kind words that you've said about me. And I want to, because I am sort of reminded of that swearing in, tell one of my case stories that I had early on in my experience as a U.S. Attorney. It was a very early case that I had as a newly minted prosecutor when they give you small cases so you can't screw up too badly. And this was a case, it was a postal inspection case, so it didn't seem like it was going to be a big deal. And it didn't involve a lot of money, but the reason that it really resonated with me is because of the victims of this. This was a financial fraud. And the victims' names appeared on a list that had been sold. And the reason that these victims were on this list is because they met certain criteria. They were elderly, they had recently lost a spouse or partner, they didn't have any family nearby, they had savings, but just so much. There was a cutoff. These people were on this list because they were lonely, vulnerable, and financially insecure. And that gave value to that list which was purchased. And the people who purchased that list then went on to systematically target each one of those people on that list, call them, send them cards, befriend them, ask about their families, exchange pictures of their so-called families. And these people opened their hearts to them and eventually opened their wallets to them, and they took every last penny these people had, their life savings. And I hope that's never happened to anyone in your family or you. But if it has, you may know that that's not just, this isn't like just it's not a financial crime really. It's like a personal assault. To lose everything that you've worked for all your life. You know, when you've worked to support your kids and to set them up on solid footing and to discover at this point in your life that you're going to be beholden to them. And an early challenge in this case was getting some of those people on that list to even admit they'd been victimized because they were embarrassed. They didn't want to admit that Joe wasn't their friend, that now they're admit to their kids that they had lost everything that maybe their kids were also relying on. It was really hard work. And so the agent that I worked with and I worked, patiently with all the victims. And we were just as methodical as the lowlifes on the other side. And we found them, and we built a case against them, and we prosecuted them, and we were able to get some of the monies back to those people who had been defrauded. And that, to me, that stuck with me right there, because that, to me, is the essence of government service. Government in the hands of people with values and integrity can do good things. It can right wrongs. It can make sure we're all playing by the same set of rules. It can speak for the people who don't have a voice. And that's the kind of advocacy that I've tried to do in the rest of my life. Here, I've tried to do it on behalf of volunteer firefighters, victims of domestic violence, and kids who are at risk for substance abuse. It's the kind of representation that I'd like to bring to the 64th District to make sure every citizen here feels like they have access to opportunity. I think that's more important than ever when we have a budget crisis and we're going to have to make some really tough choices. And people need to feel that they're going to be fairly represented. And if there's pain that needs to be spread and budgetary sacrifice, that we're all in this together. And that if we're going to share in that sacrifice, that means we're all going to get to participate in the recovery that comes after that. We all want our kids to have the opportunities that we had. We all want them to be able to stay here and grow up in our towns and raise families here. We want them to feel that this system is fair and they're going to get a fair shake. So I'd really like to fight for those values in the 64th District. I think that means a certain set of priorities, which I'm not going to list tonight because they're long, and I know that we're not going to sit here for a long time, but I think the three things that I really want to talk about a lot are healthcare, education, and the economy. And I think those first two represent investments that are critical for the long-term growth of the economy. In terms of healthcare, we are at a moment when access to affordable healthcare is under attack by the federal government, and sometimes it feels like an entire political party. I don't think we should live in a society where a single healthcare crisis can wipe out a family. We have to do something about that, and I think we can. So we're going to be fighting for that. I think to me, healthcare also includes gun violence, which I view as a public health issue. Connecticut has some of the strongest gun violence or gun control regulation laws on the books, thanks in part to a lot of advocacy on the part of Roberta Willis and Michelle. But they know better than anyone else. That's not a fixed thing, that there are people nipping at the heels outside, moneyed interests who'd like to see that change every day. And so we have to continue to fight and support those laws and to strengthen them as we go forward. I think education, we're not going to have an economic recovery if we don't invest in education. We have a tradition of educational excellence around here, and we have to stick up for it and make sure that we make those investments and provide our local schools in particular with the kind of flexibility and resources they need to survive the demographic challenges that they're going through right now. That also, a commitment to education goes beyond just secondary. It also includes things like community colleges, job training programs, apprenticeships, the things that give people the kind of training they need for long-term stable careers so that they can stay here. We need to support that as well. I think those are critical investments and really important priorities that we're going to have to keep our eye on the ball all the time in order to have the economic recovery that we all deserve. I think there are many other things included in that, like workforce housing and access to the internet. But I won't go, we can go through the list later over a drink. I am unbelievably moved by your support for me tonight. I take it very seriously. There's talk in sort of the media really about this blue wave as if it's some phenomena that we're watching on the Weather Channel, that it's going to oversweep us. We are the blue wave. Every single one of us is a drop of water in that wave, and we are just the beginning of that. We need to build that momentum and talk to everybody we know and make that wave happen, and I think we can. We have a fight on our hands, but if we all join together, it's a fight we're going to win, and I am very proud to represent you, and I thank you all for being here tonight.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?